Hey, everybody. John Troutman, Truth or Comfort podcast. We have Devon Voss here with Thomas Title, who is a phenomenal young man. Actually, he's 30 now, right? So
yeah,
not so young anymore.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, he's getting old. He's got a phenomenal story. I actually tricked him today to get him here. I told him that we had all sorts of gifts and stuff for him, so he came here for the gifts. Yep. And the gift was being on this podcast. Anyways, hey, I appreciate you being a sport and doing this. I know it's not typically what you do, so thank you for participating today. If you wouldn't mind, like, I know you run Thomas Title here, which is phenomenal. It's a great company. It's who we do our transactions through whenever we possibly can now. And mainly because the way that you've cultivated our relationship.
Sure.
And second of all, how smooth, I would say relationship first, second, how smooth the transactions are.
Of course.
Right? So anyways, thank you. And I want to point out that you've never asked for my business. I don't know if you know that.
No.
Never asked for it.
That either makes me a good salesperson or a terrible salesperson.
I think it works. We're giving you all of our business, and we're actually, this is actually a commercial for Thomas Title.
I mean, here's the reality, though, right? I mean, I've always believed that you just continue to put positive deposits in people's lives, and things naturally come, right? I would say that, my top 25 clients they're kind of the same story, right? You just keep investing in their lives. You find other ways to make them successful, and as a byproduct, business comes our way. And that just not only there, it happens with, other businesses that I'm participating in, right? Kind of same philosophy.
Right. So we've had many talks over the last couple of years. But why don't you share how you got started in real estate? What drove you to get started in real estate? Maybe, if you could.
Yeah. And I don't know if you actually know the story.
Well, now you say that, I thought I did, but now I'm worried I didn't. But or don't.
Or maybe I'm
going to find out.
Maybe I haven't. So here's the story. I grew up in a pretty affluent family, right? Both my parents were in the motion picture business, right? They had done, movies like The Green Mile, Face Off, very well affluent in that space, as well as the commercials, right? My mom's done a lot of, Super Bowl commercials of that. But so they made a lot of money, but they'd also spend a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't grow up in the best atmosphere, right? It was kind of a tough home, and I knew there had to be a better way. So what I did was, and this is the truth, I literally locked myself in the Burbank Public Library for 4 years, just studying bibliographies of successful people, not just necessarily about affluent folks, but people that are generous, people that where they respect other folks, right? And kind of a common denominator there was, putting positive deposits in people's lives. And the other one was really to not think like the traditional person in terms of growing your wealth, which is, growing businesses and especially in real estate. So me working in a factory since I was 14,
Wait, this affluent family had you working, was it a Nike sweatshop or what was it?
It really was, actually. Okay. My family had owned a factory, and they did teach me a great work ethic, right? So that way I could put myself through college, help buy my own car, stuff like that, and so I just kept doing things, right? So when I was 14 and I was starting to accumulate money, I was trying to buy stocks. I was trying to buy bonds. I did everything. I failed a lot too, but I did it, right? And then I turned 20 years old. We're in the middle of the recession. Everybody thought I was crazy. And, I bought a couple single family homes by myself out here in Phoenix. I had still lived in Los Angeles at the time. And it was scary for me, but hey, I took the shot, right? And we walked away pretty well. And at that point, I just kept figuring out what are some of the wealthiest people doing, and some of my other family members have accumulated a nice net worth. They said hands down, commercial real estate. So then I started
commercial real estate.
So buying retail centers, apartment buildings, stuff like that. So from what I did there was I kind of packaged, the single family side and rolled it into commercial real estate. And I'll be honest with you, my first deal, I mean, I put it into escrow. I didn't even know I was going to be able to close. I literally looked at the building. It was large. I never thought I would acquire something that large. And it really wasn't big. It was just a 16-unit building. Right? I cried all the way home. I didn't know. And I didn't. I cried all the way home.
And now you laugh all the way to the bank.
I did. And we were able to, do very well on that deal. And it's just a matter of, finding that team, but doing it, right? Not being able, I think especially in school today, it's you get in trouble for making mistakes, right? And I think that's the difference between, doctors, lawyers, people who sit, behind a desk, and entrepreneurs is, we do it, we make calculated, strategic decisions, but we do it and we consistently learn, right? But we also mitigate our risk by building a solid team around us. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you tend to have failures more often than successes. Right. But it's you do it enough times, when you're onto something, and it perseveres, and you know when to drop stuff when it's just not clicking. Right.
Right.
So when was the first deal that you did? Was that the ones out here?
Yeah, I think I was 20 years old, and it was right where the I-17 and the 303 connected. It was about a $500,000 house right before the recession, and I picked it up for about $100,000.
Nice.
And I just held on to it for a couple of years, rented it out.
Right.
And a couple of years later, sold it for a couple multiple.
Yeah.
And took it.
So your first deal was your first commercial deal was a 16-unit, which is a good size.
Right.
So what are you working on now? How many years ago was that, by the way?
Just under 3.
Okay.
Yeah, just under 3.
So how have things progressed since then doing commercial?
Well, economies of scale, right? I mean, that's the benefit of doing it on the commercial side. And right now I'm in a unique position because, I've always had this W-2 job, right? Whether it be in the factory, whether it be in title. I've been in title now, since I was a teenager. So we're going on 15 years.
I want to talk about that and then
Sure.
we'll go back into this. Okay, go ahead, finish that, and I want to talk about title.
And it's a byproduct, right? So you take your W-2 income and you essentially convert it into passive income. So the money that I make at these W-2 jobs, right, or referrals or whatever they may be, you use that. You pay your bills, right, whatever it may be, but then you consistently acquire different assets to, essentially you're converting your W-2 income, which gets taxed at 35-40%, and you convert it into passive income, which is, essentially tax-free in some cases. Right.
Smart, huh, you guys? Okay. So let's talk about how you got started in, I tell this story. I haven't told you that I tell this story, but I find it so fascinating. I think your grandfather actually told you to do something at 5 o'clock. You would go in and see executives working.
Oh, yeah. It was actually my dad.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
It's interesting, right? I mean, I didn't live in the best environment, right? And
affluent filmmaker sounds horrible. I don't even know how you did it.
It's tough, right? Because they'd come home and obviously take it out on me, which wasn't fun for many of my life. But but here, look, whether it's the listeners, whoever's listening, you can either go a couple ways, right? You could either complain about it, you can either go, the substance route, you could do a variety of different things, right? And rather than doing that, I was just like, you know what? I want to provide for my family, and I want to, the chain stops here, and we can move forward. So that was the approach that I went.
Yeah, there's the victim mentality or the opportunist that it doesn't matter what's put in front of me, I'm going to succeed. Absolutely. Yep. And a lot of people, unfortunately, take the woe is me, the victim mentality, which just is a hard one for me to be around that type of mentality.
Agreed. And I think where you're going with this was, even though my dad especially was very tough, when I was 15, 16 years old, I did work for a title company in Burbank, California, and he said, son, he goes, these people have they have families, they have to go home to. Before you leave, right, to go home, you go to each vice president in that company and you just say, is there anything I can do to get you home to your family, quicker? And every day I did that. And it became a joke, right? They'd just laugh and be like, oh, no, Dev, I'm fine. Like after weeks and months of this, right? But it was, that mentality of, putting positive deposits, into people's lives, right? And being able to learn, right? And while a lot of people in my department would, go home or leave 5 minutes early, I wanted to learn, right? And a lot of those vice presidents, they helped mentor me. And I swear to God, I kept getting, promoted every 6 months, right? At the age of, when I turned 18 years old, I had opened up 2 branches, one in the Philippines and one in India, right? So you just keep doing that, but, go there to learn, right? And, I was always told, learn as much in your 20s and make as much as in your 30s, right? And never stop learning. And I knew at a young age, I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to be mentored by these folks and learn their habits.
I love it. Like, I just want to recap that for people that are watching this. Like, this is such a key piece. Like, instead of like looking at your job and jamming out of there as quick as possible, like 5 minutes early, or, watching the clock the last 30 minutes, whatever it is, taking ownership of it and going up to the people, not in a kiss-ass way, but how can I succeed at this? And having the right attitude, mentality around it. Like, what can I get you? That's one of the most powerful things I've heard. Like, where's this advice in school? Like, what do I have to do, Mr. or Mrs. Executive VP or whatever, to get you home to your family sooner? What can I help you do to accomplish that? I don't know. Don't you guys think that's pretty cool? I just look at it and go, yeah, that's 100% on point. Like, that's the way, like, that's the stuff that we're not teaching anymore, or I've never was taught that. So having good mentors that you could get those pearls from, I think everybody has those, right? People that have made impacts in your life to where you're like, okay, I'm going to take that pearl, this one. Pretty soon you have a necklace, So where's your pearl necklace? Anyways, it's one of those things, you guys. It's huge. Like, out of this, I don't know. It just hit me when you said it the first time to me. I was like, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's just being a sponge, right? And I consistently do that, right? That's part of the reason why I came here today, right? Obviously, you're successful, and I'm always looking to grow. Maybe you'll say 5 things. If I could pick up one and I could actually apply that to my life, let's do it, right? Like, for example, even after here, right? In every area in my life, I'm trying to grow, right? I'm trying to be the best Christian I can, the best future husband, the best friend, whatever it may be. After this, I'm go and have lunch with my pastor because I want him to consistently hold me accountable for being at church, for, being a better man, right? So I think anytime you could be a sponge and be better, but you also need accountability, right? And I do believe you need those people in your life to hold you accountable in each area.
Absolutely. Yeah, key piece in making sure you're accountable to yourself, to the people around you. What about, let's go back to some projects. What are you working on now? So 3 years ago, you did your first commercial deal. And we're getting into, for us, we've been doing commercial for about 7 years. 6 years, 7 years. And it's crazy how fast it could take off. And some of the stuff that you end up doing, you've gone gangbusters in 3 years. That being said, we're educating and teaching people now the commercial aspect in real estate investing, and nobody's really doing it. They might do multifamily, but we're doing, office and industrial and warehouse, retail, whatever it is, right? Along with multifamily. It just seems like multifamily's been a little crowded for the last 2 years, maybe plus, but I know there's still opportunity there. But we're just seeing higher returns in other areas, like this office complex, for example. So, but what are you? My point being is, one, we're now teaching it, and we haven't before because we do it all day long, so we might as well teach it, right? The second thing is it's scalable pretty quick. Like, could you talk about that? Like, literally, 3 years ago, you did your first deal, didn't know how you were going to close it, which is pretty typical. I think I do that all the time. So, and they happen, most of the time they go down. So if you could just kind of bring us up to speed, like how how that's escalated.
Yeah, well, I'm being tested right now. I really am. I'm being tested, right? Being tested with patience. Like for a better term, we hit a home run with that apartment building. And I have, my capital sitting on the sideline as well as other investors who, want to partake in it. But you make your money when you buy, right? You make your money when you buy, and you sustain it with great property management. I've always said that. It's a little inflated out there. It's a little crowded, right? Being part of a title company, I love that I am there because I get to see the off-market deals. I get to see the transactions, and it's definitely crowded, especially folks from Chicago and California, right? There's a lot of money coming here, especially Denver. So I'm patient. I have to be patient, but I do have a good broker that's part of my team, and we're hitting off-market deals. We're knocking on doors of owners, just saying, hey, we can either close cash, refinance later, just trying to find those good opportunities. But I'm very weary to overpay for something as well. So I'm definitely being challenged with patience, and that's not one of my core values, unfortunately. But also, fortunately, I have a high sense of urgency. But we're just trying to find some off-market deals right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I think most good investors have that sense of urgency, but also are conservative. So you have to fight those two things, and what overpaying and taking on an asset that's not really performance based. It's like you don't need to do it for practice. You need to do it to make money. So some of these, I think, a lot of bigger companies are doing them just to accumulate and add to their portfolio, because they've liquidated something. They need to move on something. So it doesn't even necessarily.
And they're okay with the 4 or 5% cash on cash return,
which is crazy to me. But
they're okay with it. And then with the new tax law, with bonus depreciation, you're able to write off 20 to 30% of your purchase price, right? So it makes sense for them. Right. It makes sense for them. It's better than having their investors put money in a CD. Unfortunately, that kind of yield doesn't excite me nor my investors. Right. And you just got to continue to find the yield and find your strength. And once you build a team and, source out, off-market deals and get creative. Right. We were talking earlier about, rather than just walking away from deals, get creative, find a way to make it happen. Right. Whether it be seller carryback or, there's a lot of different ways to be creative to make it work and to make the numbers work. Right.
Yeah. So that's another thing. I think a lot of people look at what they don't look at necessarily repositioning that commercial asset in a different light or use. And I think if you could look at it that visually of what that looks like once you can identify a different use for it, or even the same use, just visually enhanced, you can maximize it, whether it's executive suites, things like the co-working space, obviously is hot, things like that, and fleshing out those different types of models in that. So anyways, lots of good stuff going on in commercials, especially here in Phoenix. But I think there's a kind of like a waking up nationwide of people, investors that are like, hey, I want a different type of yield. I want a different type of, asset in my portfolio, maybe something less crowded space. I mean, commercial's definitely less crowded, and you could get typically terms on some of these too, like on a lot of non-performing assets. At least that's what we found. So, yeah, lots of opportunities. Hey, I got a question for you. A couple questions.
Shoot.
Okay. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Let's do it.
Don't be scared.
All right.
Okay. First one is if you were to do a value add for the listeners, like picking out something that, what advice would you give anybody looking to get started in real estate or just life in general, entrepreneurship, being their own boss, whatever that might be, of encouragement, or maybe like rules that you live by?
Build a team and plus it up. Right, you got to build a solid team. Right, I have what's called a personal board of advisors. Right, people to hold me accountable. I run things by them, whether it be my relationship. You're seeing that. Obviously, I'm leaving here to go have lunch with my pastor. Right, to hold me accountable. But build a team around you. Build a team of people that are more successful from you and ask the right questions. The other thing is to plus it up. Right, I've kind of trademarked this little thing called Voss +1. right? Always find ways to plus it up, right? Whether it be, with your residents or how you communicate, always try to do +1, right? I even do it with waking up early, right? I always try to, be up 1 hour earlier than everybody, right? But always try to plus it up. I'll give you an example. For the 16-unit building down in Chandler, okay, we tried implementing kind of a hospitality service, right? In terms of, a value add to the listeners, it'd be how you communicate and how you can love and put positive deposits in people's lives. I would sit there every quarter and write handwritten thank you notes to every resident, just saying, hey, just wanted to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to serve you. If we can do anything to make this more special, let us know. On some Fridays, once a month, we would actually have little Chick-fil-A biscuits on their way to work on Fridays, right? So we'd sit there with a little bag and a coffee and give it to them on their way.
That's pretty cool.
On their way to work. Cost us from a marketing expense, very nothing. The other thing is to listen, right? When you're on the phone with an investor or a resident, we trained our property managers to listen. If they had a pain in their life, whether it be a passing of a dog or a family member, whatever it may be, we would show up in 30 minutes with flowers. We'd go to AJ's real quick, show up with flowers, and just say, hey, we really appreciate you being here, and we're very sorry. Our deepest condolences. Always plus it up no matter what. With investors, and this irritates me a lot. A lot of, syndicators, what they'll do is they overpromise on numbers. Plus it up with, the return, right? Know you can get a higher return. Right? And, it's this whole raving fan philosophy, right? Always go above and beyond and always try to go the extra mile. And
under promise, over deliver.
100%. And it's easier said, right? One thing I always do is, if someone shoots me an email or makes me a phone call, right? And I'm like, hey, can I get back to you tomorrow on that? Knowing that I'm going to do it today, right? So they're expecting me to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it within the next hour, right? It's constantly doing that. Same thing with the residents. Hey, we'll have someone reach out to you in the next 12 hours. We do it in 1, whatever it may be. So it's always plussing it up.
I like it. I mean, that's a huge nuggets for people that are listening to this podcast right now. Super impressive. I tell people that I don't want this to go to your head or anything. No. You're a humble guy, really. So I don't mind saying it, but it's always a pleasure, and I'm always impressed with you. I mean, for your age and the way that you act and carry yourself and your maturity level, all of it, like, I'm humbled by it. So it's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're not out of the woods yet. So, started young, working in a factory for his family. You keep looking at my shoes. Did you make these for me? They're about 16 years old. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I did.
So
it was actually mail. I was on an assembly line for bulk mail.
Let me see your finger. Look at all those paper cuts, man. You doing all right?
Well, that's just the first year. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so you've had some great successes in your life, some great mentors. Between your mentors and yourself, I'm going to include everybody in this question, because you have a lot of people that I know that you haven't mentioned on this that are very affluent and successful. How many Lamborghinis do you guys all have combined?
Us?
Yeah.
0.
What are you talking about?
And I'll tell you why. I promise you this, and I tell Renee, my fiance, this all the time. We're so fortunate. We have one family member that, they're worth a lot of money, right? When we go up to their clubhouse, which is probably the most prestigious clubhouse in Arizona, they're really not driving those cars, right? I mean, I know one person. He's an investor with me. He's probably worth $150 million. He's driving a Lexus that's older than mine. They just a lot of those folks, that's not really how they live. Yeah, they have the nice house and everything, but they really do. They're very modest. Right. I mean, obviously it depends, but then you get, a lot of these folks that here's the difference. It's the difference between a balance sheet and an income statement. The folks with the high, income statement, they're making a lot. They're also spending a lot. A lot of these guys I promise you, what they're doing is they're just hoarding that money and putting it into their family trust to go buy, more commercial buildings, more businesses, right? They're not really interested in that. Yeah, I mean, my family members have. I mean, I think we have more Teslas than most people, but I mean, we're also not driving, $500,000 cars.
Right. I mean, it's huge. So we ask everybody that, and I know that there's some marketing companies that we've talked to, and I get that they have to, and maybe to validate what they do, sure. Right? That's not the space that we're in. We're in the real estate space. So when I see real estate people, I don't actually see real estate people, real investors buying that stuff.
It's the brokers and the lenders. It's true.
Well, and that plate stops spinning at some point too. Everything good comes to an end as far as that goes. I mean, I was vice president of Washington Mutual for 6 years, made great money, could have did a lot of stuff. And once that came to an end, that's when I was like, all right, I'm never going to get caught again without controlling my own resources, income, all that stuff. But yes, the Lamborghini question does come up all the time. We've had people that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars or $100 million or plus that manages maybe up to $300 million. They have the Lexus from '89 or something like that. Yeah. Same thing. But anyways, it's one of those things. I think once you have that access to it and you can do it, it's hard to pull the trigger because you could go and buy another asset that's going to spit out more money. Yeah. And so that's, I think just that's the difference. But what we try to do, and the reason for the question isn't to pick on the people that do it. It's maybe to make the listeners aware of like, what are you following that person for? If they're supposed to be a real estate investor and you never actually see the real estate investing they do, what is it that you're buying into? You're buying into a program that they're offering. How solid is the program if all they're doing is driving around in fancy cars and just talking about that, not talking about what their projects are, how they got the projects, how they're repositioning these things, time on market, what they paid for, educating people.
Be humble.
Yeah.
Be humble. It's just as simple as that. I mean, it's not even our money really. It's God's. But I mean, be humble and be generous with it.
Right.
I have a couple nice things, but they were all purchased, my investors bought them for me, right? As a thank you. But yeah, be humble, be smart, and keep buying assets, right? And the more assets that you acquire, the lower your tax bracket becomes too. And I think that's the huge paradigm shift for a lot of people too, right? That's where all the incentives are is to buy assets. So keep acquiring.
Well, also, I often say it's like getting off the tarmac. It's your first piece of real estate is probably going to be your toughest, right? Not probably, it will be. But let's say you get a residual coming in off of it. Maybe enough to maybe make a car payment, maybe not close, right? If you keep acquiring those and keep acquiring assets, your life gets easier and easier and easier. And so does the process gets easier and easier and easier. You'll probably push it up and get yourself out of your comfort zone doing something else, but you have the process down. It's nothing as tough is actually the mental process of taking that initial leap and having courage to do so. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, and here's another thing too, right? Even if you have the funds, take a shot and invest with somebody else, right? Whether it be, a well-known syndicator, whatever it may be, so that you can understand how they communicate with investors, how they do their property management. Here are the forms that you need. Here's the subscription agreement that you need. Like before, I recently just did it, right? Because I'm getting on a bigger level. I invested with, very well-known guys, because I want to see how do they deliver, right?
Smart.
Because it's, everything sounds good, right? But how do they deliver? What are those documents that they use? How are they doing it? Right. In fact, yesterday I invested into an oil and gas drilling company up in North Dakota. Same thing, right? I want to see how they do it, right? So, it wasn't chump change, but it was enough, it's going to spit off monthly cash flow,
Right.
and I'm able to write off 80 to 90% of that investment year one. Makes sense numbers wise, but invest with somebody else that may be a mentor or whoever it may be to kind of help mitigate that risk. Right. And I think that's key. Because I've been able to do it on the single family side and with small commercial properties. Now that capital's becoming more available, how are these folks doing it with a couple hundred units? Right. So I'm trying to gather all their secrets, combine them with my secrets, the Voss 1+1 kind of methodology, and kind of create that own unique brand. Right. So that's what I would encourage them to do.
I love it. You guys. Devon, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it. Everybody that's listening to this, I know that you guys are enjoying it or enjoyed it. Truth or Comfort podcast. I mean, the truth is that, hey, it's hard work, but it's worth it. You got to just follow it, get going out there. If you're watching, and you haven't got started, like Devon said, you got to jump in and start doing it. You just got to whether it's by yourself, or investing with someone else or having a mentor show you how that process works. You just got to get started in it. You have to.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Based on what
I'm not going to answer. I plead the fifth.
You've gotten a chance to know me pretty well, and we have a good friendship. If you could challenge me or give me one piece of advice that I kind of need to hear, what would it be?
The first thing that comes to my head, which I'm going to just say, is do more speaking. Mm-hmm. I know you like to say you're in the you hide, but you have a lot of knowledge, sure. And you're a phenomenal person for people to follow and inspire to be like you. So you need to be out there more. Yes, you need to be in front of people more, yes, and you need to share that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any way I can help you and your listeners, let me know.
Absolutely. Seriously. You just did, and I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Betcha.
All right. Come give me a hug.